What's up, Clever Masterminds? Clever Boy 86 here. This is another one of those personal videos where I sit down and talk to you guys about stuff that's going on in my personal life outside of YouTube. And the reason why I'm making this video is because something happened yesterday and I felt the need to make a video about it. And I've made about 4 or 5 of these videos. They're all in a playlist called Personal. But basically what happened yesterday was I got into a really big fight with my mother. Now, to give you guys a little backstory, basically I lived in South Dakota for a year, as I'm sure most of you guys know. So I lived in South Dakota for a year, and I really wanted to stay there. You know, I went to school there. I did 6th grade there, and I was really happy there. I really liked living in South Dakota. But my mother, who lives in Henderson, said that I had to come back here for 7th grade, but I wanted to stay in South Dakota for 7th grade and, you know, continue going to the school that I was at. And there was a lot of fighting between me and her. I did a whole, 30-minute long video about it. But basically, I ended up having to come back here. And it was really devastating. You know, it was a really, really tough time for me, for my dad. And it was just a really hard time after I came back. And the weeks leading up to my return to Vegas, you know, it's just really hard, you know, the thought of coming back to Vegas and leaving everything in South Dakota behind. But I ended up having to come back here. And the whole South Dakota situation has definitely had a negative impact on my relationship with my mother. You know, I've gotten into a lot of fights about the whole situation, and you know, things just haven't really been the same since before everything went down in South Dakota. I feel like I haven't really been able to completely forgive her. You know, she's still my mother. That'll never change. But she made what I think was a terrible decision in bringing me back here. And both my dad and I lost a lot coming back here. And I think the decision she made to bring me back to Vegas was, in my opinion, a terrible decision on my mother's part. And I've been feeling the effects of it for the past year and 2 months. And I really don't think my mother understands how bad this affected me. You know, I think about this shit every day. And I guess she just expects me to forget about the whole situation. I don't know. I mean, she's never tried to talk to me about it. You know, she's never initiated a conversation between me and her. Like, the only time we've ever talked about it was in a therapy session with my therapist. But yeah, she's never tried to talk to me about what happened in South Dakota. And I think that was a big part of the fight that I had with her yesterday, which I'll get into that in a minute. But anyways, so basically that's a little bit of backstory. Now, let's talk about what happened yesterday. So, yesterday was my first day of school, and the day before yesterday, I got into an argument with my mother, not about the whole South Dakota situation, but I basically just said that I wasn't looking forward to going back to school, and I didn't even say anything about what happened in South Dakota. That wasn't even, you know, part of the conversation. I was just, trying to talk to her about going back to school. And she got all defensive, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to go back to South Dakota?" Which obviously I can't do that. I mean, I would if I could, believe me. I'd give up everything that I have to go back to South Dakota, to go to the school that I was at. And I just felt like it was really unfair of my mother to say that, because it was basically like she was just like rubbing salt in the wound. And I'd been thinking about it yesterday when I was at school. So when I got home from school, I basically told her, look, I think what you said last night when you said, do I want to go back to South Dakota, was really unfair. And that's basically how I put it. And she just blew the whole thing out of proportion. And it turned into this huge fight between me and her. I don't even remember how it happened, to be honest. She just blew the whole thing out of proportion. And it ended up being this big, like, 30-minute long argument. And I was basically trying to tell her how I felt, which was, I'm still really hurt by the decision you made. And she literally told me to get over myself. And I just thought that was a really ridiculous thing to say, because, you don't just tell someone who's having a hard time to get over themselves, especially if it's your kid. Like, that's just, like, the completely wrong thing to say, in my opinion. And then, like, I asked her, like, did she even lose anything when she brought me back here? And she literally said, yeah, I lost my sanity. So she's basically telling me to get over myself, but she's making the whole situation about her without any consideration for how the whole situation was for me. She was only concerned with how it was for her. And, she kept saying, like, oh, she was at her wit's end and she couldn't take anymore. And then she kept saying things like, oh, go live with your dad. It's obvious you just want to live with your dad full time. He can obviously do a better job parenting you than me. And just like all these things to try and make me feel bad. And then she basically called my dad and told him to come pick me up because she couldn't take anymore. And like, while she was on the phone with my dad, I was yelling at her and I was like, I can't take anymore. And I had it at that point. But yeah, anyways, so basically she packed up like her computer and I don't even know where she went, but she just left the apartment. And the last thing I said to her before she left was, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And she was like, excuse me? And she turned around and looked like she wanted to hit me. And she's done that before, only once. And it was about 2 years ago when I was 11. But she looked like she wanted to hit me. But she just turned around and walked out. And then my dad picked me up and we talked about it. But it was a pretty bad fight. A lot of stuff got brought up. And it was pretty bad. And this has happened before. Like, I've gotten into a really bad fight with her. And she's had to call my dad to come pick me up because I've been fighting with her. And this is the third time that it's happened this year. The first time was in January when I got into a really big fight with her about the whole South Dakota situation. The second time was in April, and I stayed with my dad in a motel room for about 3 days, and I didn't talk to her. And this is the third time that this happened. And, if this is happening multiple times, then it's obviously a problem. I don't know how she doesn't see that. I've talked to my therapist about it. She agrees that this is something that needs to be addressed. And my mother hasn't even talked to me. It's been over 24 hours since that whole fight. And she hasn't texted me, she hasn't called me. And this has happened before where I've gotten into a really big fight with her and she's just ignored me. Back in May of last year when I was still in South Dakota, I got into this really big fight with her on the phone during Mother's Day. And she basically ignored me for 3 weeks straight. She didn't call me, she didn't text me, just radio silence until she came to pick me up at the beginning of June to take me back to Vegas. So this has happened before. But I just felt the need to make this video just because these videos are therapeutic, where I talk about stuff that's going on in my life outside of YouTube. But I gotta wrap this video up because I just got a low battery sign on my phone. So anyways, I'm gonna end the vlog here. Sorry this was the vlog for today, but I just needed something to film, so sorry about that. But anyways, I'm gonna end the vlog here. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you all for the next one. Alright, bye guys.